Maybe.
Everyone knows that everyone loves music, and that everyone that they know loves music too. Can you imagine a world without music? We can't either, and as a collective of songwriters, composers and music publishers, we provide opportunities for our members to develop their craft and generate income that they wouldn't be able to do on their own. It may sound obvious, but music doesn't make itself. People invest huge amounts of time, money and creativity into crafting music for us to enjoy. For this reason, when music is played in a business or organisation, it's important to seek permission from the people that make the music we love. It breaks down like this. People write music and then record it for us to enjoy. In Australia and New Zealand, as well as around the world, the law says that people that make music have the right to be paid when their music is used. Music creators appoint APRA AMCOS to look after certain rights on their behalf. This means businesses using music don't have to contact every songwriter and composer. APRA AMCOS issues licenses in Australia and through One Music in New Zealand, giving the businesses the permission they need to play music and charge a fee in return. People running businesses play music to keep people happy when they're shopping, to keep people dancing, to keep people exercising, to entertain people, to keep their businesses humming, their customers happy, and ultimately to make the world a better place. Without APRA AMCOS, businesses would have to seek permission from every songwriter, composer and publisher to play their music. After collecting license fees, APRA AMCOS pays those fees to songwriters, composers and publishers as royalties. APRA AMCOS is a non-profit organisation, meaning that after administration costs, all of the money collected is paid to the people who make the music. These royalties are a large part of how people that write and perform music can continue to make a living doing what they do. We're here for those that make music and businesses that play music.
So that's a pretty just a general overview of things. So what we do is we're a rights management organisation. We look after several different aspects of copyright for songwriters. As I mentioned here, we look to ensure that composers and songwriters and their publishers are rewarded whenever and wherever their musical works, so their songs are played, performed and reproduced throughout the world. And we also help Australian and New Zealand music customers, so businesses, gain access to the world's musical repertoire. So some of the stuff talking about that in the video about how to get the permission, so we're the third party for that. So a few bits and pieces about APRA AMCOS. We're a not-for-profit organisation, so we try and bring in as much money as possible, then try and get rid of it to songwriters as quickly as possible. So APRA established way back in 1926, so around when radio was started. AMCOS was established in 1979, and the two of them joined together in 1997. So I'll give a little bit of information throughout the presentation about what the different rights involve. So an important thing to remember in terms of APRA is we don't actually copyright your songs as such. So the really great thing about copyright law is you actually have automatic copyright protection under Australian copyright law and also international. So the second your song's in what's called material form, so as soon as it's been recorded, even if it's just a demo on your phone or a proper recording, or you've typed out lyrics or written out lyrics or put them on your phone, that's actual copyright there. So that's really important to remember. We get a lot of questions, people go, hey, can we copyright our songs for you? It's like, well, no, you have automatic copyright. Good thing to remember as well is that copyright exists for 70 years after the songwriter or composer's death. So sometimes if you're thinking about an old song in terms of a cover song, it's not like, you can't think, hey, this is an old song, it's out of copyright. Like the songwriter's got to be really, really dead for it to essentially happen. Not just dead, like, there's not even anything left to poke them with. 70 years, so sometimes you get those things that assuming a song's in public domain, it may not be. For anything like that, we actually have a service and you can let us know. So if you've got a song where you're wanting to use in one way or another and find out who the songwriter was, we can look into that for you. Really great resource as well, I definitely recommend writing this down, is copyright.org.au. That's the address for the Australian Copyright Council. They're a fantastic not-for-profit resource, and they have heaps of fact sheets about everything copyright related. So some of the performing and mechanical rights songwriter things that I'll talk about today, also sound recordings and a lot of other stuff. So essentially, the rationale for an organisation like a rights management organisation like APRA AMCOS is the Australian Copyright Act. We wouldn't exist without copyright, and as well as having the automatic copyright protection through the Copyright Act of 1968, you actually have international copyright protection through the Berne Convention, named after the city in Switzerland. So a few bits and pieces, like, I imagine all of today, and, particularly this presentation is going to be pretty acronym heavy. So it's really worthwhile to consider, excuse me, that with any particular song, there's actually multiple different aspects of copyright. So firstly, there's the performing right, which can also be known as the communication right. That's the right to perform music in public and transmit. So that's to do with the actual songwriting side of things, and that covers things like live, having the song played live on the radio, TV, streaming, or what have you. That's what APRA looks after. That's a right for songwriters. There's also what's called a mechanical right, which is the reproduction right. That's another songwriting one, and it's the right to copy a song onto record, CD, tape, or digital download. That's by AMCOS, and I'll explain it with a bit more practical information later on. But essentially, when we're talking about APRA AMCOS, we're talking about the performing right and the mechanical right, which is to do with the songwriters. So if you start thinking of situations where you might need different kinds of permissions, that's kind of a good way to go. There's also the copyright protection in the sound recording of a song, and that's administered by an organisation called the PPCA. It's really worthwhile remembering that the copyright owner of the performing and mechanical rights may not be the same right owner as the person who owns the sound recording. So if you think of your some music of your own, you might be the songwriter, so you own those performing and mechanical rights, but if you've got a label putting it out, depending on the agreement they've got, they may own the sound recording. So sometimes that's when you see weird covers on TV, because the performing and mechanical right, those owners have given the permission, but the person who owns the sound recording wouldn't give the permission. So just to put a few bits and pieces throughout this presentation, just about the scale and scope of APRA. So we've got around 90,000 members throughout Australia and New Zealand. There's about 13,000 in Queensland, so that's a little bit more than all of New Zealand in general. So this is just a really broad genre breakdown, just because if you haven't signed up as a member, or if you have context of this, is we do events from time to time, and we want to make sure that if we're doing a specific genre event, we're inviting the right people. So like if we're doing like an electronic event, we're not going to invite the country writers. Obviously they're welcome, but we're not going to spend their email accounts. Important thing in terms of APRA AMCOS membership, so if you're a songwriter and you've performed your songs live, or they're online or radio or TV, you're eligible to join up. If you haven't done any of those, you don't actually need to join up, because you have automatic copyright protection and we don't copyright your songs, as I mentioned before. But if you've done any of those and you haven't joined up, you may as well. It's free membership, and we might have already been collecting royalties for you. So I'll explain a bit more about the different royalty avenues throughout. But if you've been playing gigs, or if you've had songs on community radio, we might have some money for you already, and we actually spend a fair bit of our time trying to get people to sign up so we can give away the money. So this was kind of what came up in the video just before, but the rationale behind a rights management organisation like APRA AMCOS, and we work with all the other rights management organisations in other countries throughout the world. So essentially it simplifies the use of music in public for both the songwriter and also the business. So businesses, actually, it comes down to different aspects of the Copyright Act essentially. Excuse me. So without a rights management organisation, as it mentions here, a songwriter would need to approach every single business potentially using their music to give that permission. And apart from it being really, really impractical and thinking, every time someone wanted to download your song, writing to me giving a permission, or every venue giving permission, apart from it being pretty difficult, it's pretty presumptuous as well. Like, are you just writing to people going, hey, you're welcome to use my music, and people going, who are you, get away, kind of thing. So that's, that side of things. And also on the other side of things, businesses, anywhere that has music, essentially has an APRA license. It's an obligation that they have under the Copyright Act, so we essentially just make it easier on that perspective. So, this example here, a cafe, just like one of the ones in the food court, without an organisation like APRA AMCOS, they need to request permission from every songwriter to have their music played in the background of the cafe. So you think of just some background music, and you think of like a Katy Perry song that's got like 4 writers, and they're from different countries, and there's publishers and everything like that. So writing and getting permission for that specific song, and then there's another song 3 minutes later, and so on and so on. So I'm going to really quickly touch upon licensing side of things with the preface that I'm not a licensing person, so we actually have different staff looking after different things at APRA AMCOS. We've got offices in every capital city except Hobart and New Zealand. Our Sydney office has 200 people, so it's pretty, like, there's a lot of specialised staff. In Queensland we have 7. So again, it's preferencing, I can always forward these questions on without licensing, but I wouldn't, want to give you incorrect information. But essentially, as I mentioned to you, pretty much anywhere that has music in public, needs an APRA license. And the flip side, as I'll get to talk about, is there's royalties for writers. So things like pubs, clubs, schools, stores and cafes, music festivals, community festivals, restaurants, bars, radio and TV, film, web, pretty much anything has a license. So here's just a really general guide of the scale of what some of the licenses look like. So some of the things like that kind of probably pertinent to some of you guys is live music venues that do free entry or guarantees but not door tickets. They pay 2.2% of their annual expenditure on artists to us to then pay songwriters. So if you're thinking just like a little jazz cafe or a little cafe that doesn't charge but they've just got someone playing in the corner, or somewhere like Rick's, 2.2% that they spend money on bands, they paid us to pay out to writers. Or if it's a ticketed event, it's 1.65% of their door tickets. So that's like your major events and things like that. Small scale, if you've got a really, really tiny business, that's 77 bucks a year. In other places, it's something like it's $300 a year. But on the large scale of things, it's really technical jargon stuff. But a nightclub, anyone who's in the club area, it's 85 cents per person. So it's a pretty different scale. So there's some pretty large numbers involved. But yeah, again, I digress. Any specific questions about licensing, I'm more than happy to pass those on. So this is stuff that's probably more relevant to a lot of writers, and a lot of us who work at APRA ourselves are writers. So it's like, okay, cool, we get money. How do we give it out? So I'll touch upon this stuff, some of it in a bit more detail than others. But if you're gigging or if you've got your songs in various places, there's a bunch of ways you can earn money. So live performance royalties, and I'll explain a bit more in detail about this one a bit later. But essentially, any time that you play in public, whether it's a show you're getting paid for or not, there's actually a songwriting royalty you can get. So on top of whatever you get from playing the show, or even if it's just like an open mic thing where you're not getting paid, there's a songwriting royalty. Radio royalties, so I'll explain a little bit about those now. So essentially, there's a few different ways that radio works. So with commercial radio, every single song, and this includes ABC as well, every single song that they play ever on those stations, it gets the data gets sent through to us, and then we pay royalties based on that. So if you're ever being played on, like whether it's Triple J or like ABC Local or like Nova or whatever, we get the information of every song played on those stations, and there's a royalty based on that. So the way that that's done is it's a percentage of the advertising revenue that gets paid to us, and it gets divided equally by the number of songs. So Triple J pays a license fee of X dollars, that gets divided equally between every single song. So that covers your large stations. Community radio stations are a little bit different. So just because, like Triple Z, for example, or like 4AB even, their scale is so much bigger, it's not like they've got heaps of resources to send, have data and send it through. So they do what are called sample playlists, otherwise known at the stations as APRA week. So that's either 1 or 2 or 4 weeks per year, depending on the size of the station. So like Charleville, AM might do 1 week a year, Triple Z might do 4. And if you're played during those weeks, which are chosen at random, you'll receive a royalty. If you're played in other weeks, you won't. And that's just to kind of make it fair for everyone. So it's kind of done throughout the country. Give you a bit of idea about how much it is per play. So commercial radio, depending on the size of the station, can be anywhere between $6 and $20 of royalties per play. So if you're getting some spot rotation or rotation on Triple J, it can definitely add up. Even community radio stations works out to be about $5 or $10 per play. So that's the reason why they do these sample playlists, because say it's a quarter. Once a quarter, that works out well that way. But if you're dividing that, say $10 by 13 to have it every single week, it obviously goes down. TV royalties, anyone who's doing, have to chat kind of offline with anyone who's doing film or TV stuff, because that's actually a really interesting one. we actually, and we'll talk about the numbers later, but our largest source of income is TV royalties, which is crazy to think, but it's a huge amount of money. TV's a little bit different than some of the other royalties like live and radio. Those ones are just, money comes in divided equally by the number of songs. TV, because of the amount of money, and it's all based on advertising. There's still royalties, but it depends on the use. So whether it's music in the foreground of a scene, whether it's background music, or whether it's theme music, it all varies, and it depends on the time of the day. So if you've got music in the background of song, background of a thing that's playing at 3 a.m. on 7/2, that's going to pay a whole bunch of different, a lot lower money than prime time music in the foreground on 7. So that stuff kind of varies. I'll kind of go through other stuff in more detail, but as well as those royalties, there's streaming royalties, which I'll talk about in more detail. Performances at major festivals and what's called promoted concerts. Promoted concerts is a weird term. It doesn't just mean that it's a show with a promoter. It's won by a major promoter. So we'll kind of talk about more. I'll loop back to live royalties in a moment and include that. Also jingles. So if you've got jingles on TV, if you're ever running jingles and they're getting played, so you get songwriting royalties every time that jingle is played on TV as well. So if you think of any of those really annoying ads that you can think of when you think of a jingle, not only do they get paid in the first place to make it every single time that annoying jingle is on, they're making more money. And there's also this other weird thing called an unlocked performance pool. So if your songs are being played or broadcast in one way or another that doesn't come under any of that, there might be some money for you, and we can look into that. We do quarterly payments to our songwriters each year, so it's in February, May, August and November. And we also do small little distributions from when we get the money from our international partners. So they're monthly, those ones, and it depends on what countries do at different times. So, as an example, some organisations like us pay quarterly, some pay 6 monthly, and some only pay annually. So with royalties we can pay you for overseas as well, but it depends. So live royalties, this is kind of a pretty bread and butter one for a lot of members. I mean, out of the 90,000 members or so, I think about 45,000 earned royalties last financial year, and a lot of that was from live. So it's good to remember that anytime you're playing live, whether it's a small show or a big show, we do a self-reporting process called a performance report. It used to be known as an LPR. So essentially what happens is you go onto our website, you let us know the gigs that you play and the songs that you play, and royalties are based on that. So the songs you play, you receive a royalty for. Any covers you do, the person who wrote the cover, who wrote the song originally, receives the royalties. So it's a worthwhile thing doing. So if you're gigging regularly, that's great. If you're even gigging once in a while, it's worthwhile doing. Works out to be, varies from year to year, the amount, but last year it was $2.70 per song. So say if you're doing a 10-song set, once every month or so, the kind of money adds up. It's that kind of strings and picks and Ubers and stuff. So yeah, so we submit that. It's done by financial year. So if you can do it as you go, and it's due by the 31st of July each year for the previous financial year. So if anyone's been playing shows and isn't a member yet, or is a member and hasn't been doing it, you can actually go as far back as 1st of July last year. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing, just in terms of way, it's money for not doing too much, so that's worthwhile. A lot of the other stuff with the radio and TV and the online that I'm talking about, we receive that information automatically. So as long as you let us know what songs you've written, we can match up the data. But live, we need to get that information because, again, thinking somewhere like Rex, they're not getting set lists from every single person. The only exception to this is if you do play a larger event and you get given a set list on the day. That's one where you don't need to fill out the performance report form, you just need to fill out the set list. That's only an issue when you get given it. That comes out of a different pool of money based on that specific event. Usually always works out to be more than the $2.70 standard fee regular shows. So if you ever get given a set list to sign on the day, like if you've done like Triple J Unearthed thing at Laneway or something like that, or playing a festival where you get given a set list, definitely do it, because depending on the size of things, that could be, instead of the $2.70 per song, it could be like $5 a song, it could be $10 a song. If you start doing those large festivals, even if you're the first band on the bill, it can be like $50 of royalties per song. So it's definitely worth doing. Quickly touch upon some of the online, and digital royalties as well. So this is a really interesting diagram, just using iTunes as an example, that covers the different aspects of copyright. So using this one here, digital download, you know, $1.69 or whatever from iTunes, it covers both of the aspects of copyright I talked about early on. So the artist royalty, so that's the royalty that is paid to you by either your label or your aggregator review with someone like CD Baby. That's the royalty for the sound recordings. The purple one here is the sound recording royalty. So it's worthwhile again remembering that the sound recording royalty is different from the APRA AMCOS royalties. And there's also, as well as that, which, you know, that depends on who you're with, but that, you know, that might be 30% of the sale. There's also the APRA and AMCOS royalties, which add up to be 9%. So that's the royalties you get for writing the song. So if you've done an 5-song EP and you've written 4 songs and you've done 1 cover, you'd get the artist royalty, so the sound recording royalty for the 5 songs, because you were the one who recorded it. You'd get the APRA AMCOS royalties for the 4 songs that you wrote, and whoever wrote the cover got that one. With iTunes, we receive all the information for everything from iTunes. It just gets processed by, you know, we get the raw data for that. So same with Spotify and some of the other streaming services. So we do get data from Spotify each month. As I'm sure you've read in various ways, the per stream rate is very low, so it's fractions of a cent per stream. But we do receive the information. So that's kind of every single song that's streamed by anyone on Spotify gets sent through to us, and we divide that based by the royalty that the license fee they pay. Excuse me, that's paid quarterly, but only to royalties over $2 just for processing reasons. Yeah, it's a pretty low rate, but it is growing. YouTube's a kind of different kettle of fish altogether. So YouTube's a really interesting way, and because YouTube's not just music, something like Spotify, it's all music, and iTunes, it's all music, we can easily track it. With YouTube, and the information changes all the time, so we get a lot of information on YouTube, and it depends on a whole different thing. So it's, I'm changing with YouTube. So what happens is we receive information about the official video clips, and also what's called user-generated content, which is stuff that people just put online, even when they're not meant to. YouTube at least can track that information and put it towards the overall rate. And we receive information about 300,000 songs per quarter. So that's we pay those based on the percentage of advertising revenue. And we also do some research on the top 1,000 videos that aren't specific music videos to see if there's music in them as well. So kind of the scale of YouTube is pretty ridiculous though. Like it's the reason we do it that way is because it's something like 25 hours of content is uploaded to YouTube per minute. I mean, a lot of that's like cat videos, reactions to cat videos, and etc. But there's a lot of music as well. So with that amount of content, and it's pretty much, it works out to be an hour of video for every single person on Earth per month. So it's that kind of that scale of things. So we do receive information about YouTube, but kind of the prefacing the questions you might have is kind of a don't call us, we'll call you situation in terms of royalties. We'll pay royalties, but because of the sheer scale of things, if you've got 500 views of your video on YouTube, there may not be royalties because of the how that fits in with every other video. It's worthwhile looking at this as well. So online's always an interesting one. If you've ever got any questions about a particular site, let me know. We have a specific online research and online licensing division at our head office who have, can answer any question under the sun about any particular website. This is a example of a site. It's a pretty large one, and because it's being recorded, I won't actually say who it is, but they're German-based and they're big and it's cloudish looking. So this is one of their terms and conditions, and this is great. If anyone's read the entire terms and conditions of anything ever, fantastic on you. So this is this particular site, and essentially what it says here is that when you put your songs up on that site, you're waiving your rights to royalties. So you might have a bunch of tracks being streamed from this particular site, but there won't be any royalties because of these terms and conditions, which is probably like page in a paragraph 17. Any questions about online royalties, always happy to follow up for you. But it is worthwhile noticing that just because you're getting streamed, you may not be getting paid. We can't pay you because we don't get paid to pay you. There's a few different options as well. I'm definitely mindful of time. So this essentially just means, excuse me, that when you're joining up with APRA AMCOS, you're assigning these performing and mechanical rights to us so that we can collect royalties for you on your behalf. You own your copyright, we're not taking your copyright, but you're assigning these elements so that we have the permission to collect royalties for you for live performance, for radio, etc. There might be some circumstances that you don't want us to collect royalties for you for a particular reason. Usually it's one that if you've got any questions, let us know and we can opt out for you. So opt out means we might, you might decide to manage your rights for a particular aspect of your music. So a lot of the time, if you've got a publishing deal, the publisher might take your mechanical royalties, so your digital download and CD royalties, or if you're Adele and you've signed a bazillion-dollar contract with Live Nation or whatever, they might take your live royalties and return for the 60,000 person show you did the other week. In either of those circumstances where you've got a publisher or you're selling out together, always let us know. Also, there's this other option called license back, which is there might be a particular song that you don't want us to collect royalties for. So maybe you've written something for film for a particular reason, or maybe you've done a jingle for a certain reason. You can get us to not look after the royalties for that particular reason, but we would for the rest of your songs. So it's pretty specific, this kind of stuff. And again, if you've got any questions, you can let us know. This is kind of just a general idea. It's not something that is in here in terms of what we do and such, but it's just a really important thing to remember. We get a lot of calls about people who've, they've all written songs together, or they're in a band together, and turns out that maybe only one person wrote the song, but they were split 4 ways, and the drummers left the band, and the drummer didn't write the songs, but could we just change the song? And well, we can't change things without everyone's permission. So when you're working with co-writers, it's just really important to think about, in terms of the APRA side of things, going back to this idea of that we look after the performing and mechanical rights of the songwriting things. So when you're registering a song with APRA, make sure it's based on who actually wrote the song. So it mentions here, so before you're starting writing, have an agreement that do you all have the songs together, or do the royalties just go to the songwriters, and the writers may just decide to give you the people who don't write the songs some money extra based on that. Just make sure to be really clear. And this is kind of just a general advice kind of thing. Because we do get a lot of questions about this, and the only thing worse than people fighting about a song that's earned a lot of money is people fighting about a song that hasn't earned any money. And it's kind of like, is it really worth breaking a friendship for that? We get 2 or 3 calls a week, and that's just in an office of 2, so you can imagine the scale of it. A couple of ththings for anyone who isn't an APRA member and has been performing their songs live or on radio or things like that. It's definitely worthwhile joining. So, as there's, first of all, apart from all of this, there's royalties. So there's money that we've got for you that we can't pay if we don't know about you. So it's definitely worth joining up for that reason. There's also a few other things that for members, and by members, this actually includes licensees as well. So if you've got a mate who's running a business who isn't paying APRA royalties, you can kind of get them to join up with this as a sweetener. And this is also for anyone who's already a member but forgot about this. There's some good things like with Virgin Australia, when you're traveling domestically, you get up to 4 free bags, up to 64 kilograms total, I think. So if you're that's heaps and stuff. That's and that's, if you're traveling as a band, you can pull that together, or, it's really good, that kind of stuff, for just saving heaps of money when traveling. Or if you need to move house, 64 kilograms is decent. So that kind of stuff. Aon insurance, so, I think there's a bit of a discount for either public liability insurance and also instrument insurance as well. So if you're going on the road, it's worth doing that. And some other bits and pieces as well, some discounts on legal advice, some studio discounts and so on. So yeah, it's worthwhile doing it. It's free to join because we're a not-for-profit organisation. This is a worthwhile thing as well, just in terms of going back to some of the mechanical aspects I talked about earlier. So if you're releasing a cover on a CD, there's actually a mechanical license that needs to be paid to us so that then we can pay the songwriters. So if you're ever doing that, just get in contact with us and we can sort that out for you as well. That's to do with CDs, and generally